The first time I realized someone had stolen my identity wasn't when the police called. It wasn't when my lawyer looked across the conference table and quietly said, "You need to prepare yourself." It wasn't even when I found out there was a $90,000 loan under my name. It was the moment a woman from the bank politely asked me why I'd stopped making payments. I remember laughing. Not because it was funny, because I honestly thought she'd dialed the wrong number. "I'm sorry," I said. "I think there's been some mistake." There was a pause, then she read my full name. My date of birth. My home address. My social security number. Everything matched. Except one thing. I never borrowed $90,000. The woman sounded confused. "Our records show you signed the loan agreement 3 weeks ago." 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks earlier was the exact day I'd told my parents I wasn't paying for my younger sister's wedding. At that moment, I still believed everything was just a misunderstanding. I had no idea the people who'd spent my entire life calling me the responsible one had already decided responsibility meant they could become me. And by the time I learned the truth, my own family had nearly destroyed everything I'd worked for. Growing up, everyone had a role in our family. Dad was the peacemaker. Mom believed appearances mattered more than almost anything else. My younger sister, Emily, was the princess. And I was the backup plan. I didn't realize it when I was little. Children think every family works the same way. If Emily forgot her homework, Mom drove it to school. If I forgot mine, Dad smiled sympathetically. "You'll remember next time." When Emily failed math, they hired a tutor. When I struggled with chemistry, Mom slid a textbook across the table. "You've always been independent." Everyone said that like it was a compliment. It was in single quotes. It meant nobody came when I needed help. If Emily wanted something expensive, my parents found a way. If I wanted something, I was told to earn it. Eventually, I did. I got scholarships, worked weekends, graduated without asking anyone for money, built my consulting business from a tiny apartment where my office was a folding table balanced against the wall. I wasn't rich, not billionaire rich anyway. But after almost 10 years of 16-hour days, I'd built something stable. No debt, healthy savings, clients who trusted me, the freedom to say no when something wasn't right. That freedom had taken years to earn. My family thought it belonged to them. Emily had always loved attention. Birthdays became birthday weeks. Graduation became a 3-day celebration. When she turned 25, Mom organized a surprise vacation that somehow everyone else ended up paying toward. Nobody questioned it. If anyone hesitated, Mom had the same line ready. "She's just different." No, she wasn't different. She'd simply never been told no. When Emily announced her engagement, Mom cried before Emily even finished speaking. Dad opened an expensive bottle of champagne he'd been saving for years. Emily held out her ring like she'd won an Olympic medal. Everyone applauded. I hugged her. And I meant it. Despite everything, she was still my sister. I genuinely hoped she'd found someone who made her happy. His name was Daniel. He was charming, funny, always smiling. The kind of man who remembered birthdays and complimented everyone's cooking. My parents adored him within a week. I tried. I really did. But something about him felt rehearsed. Every conversation sounded practiced. Every joke landed perfectly. Every apology came too quickly. It wasn't enough to accuse him of anything, just enough to make me uncomfortable. I ignored the feeling. I wish I hadn't. A month after the engagement, Mom invited everyone over for Sunday dinner. The table looked like Thanksgiving. Roast chicken, homemade bread, Emily's favorite potatoes. Dad even polished the silverware. Halfway through dessert, Emily clinked her glass. "So," she grinned, "we found the perfect venue." Everyone cheered. She passed around photos. The place looked beautiful. A lakeside estate, stone pathways, white flowers, huge ballroom. It also looked expensive. Very expensive. Dad asked carefully, "What's the budget?" Emily exchanged a glance with Daniel. About 120,000. The room went quiet. Dad blinked. Mom recovered first. It's once in a lifetime. Emily nodded dramatically. Exactly. Dad forced a smile. That's ambitious, Emily shrugged. We deserve the wedding we've dreamed about. I stayed quiet. Then Mom looked directly at me. We've actually already discussed a solution. I frowned. We? Mom smiled. You've done so well with your business. Something inside me tightened. Emily reached across the table and squeezed my hand. We don't want charity, Daniel added quickly. Just a little help. I waited. Mom finally said it. If you could cover about 90,000. For a second, I honestly thought she'd misspoken. 90,000. Emily smiled. You've always been so generous. I laughed once. A short, confused laugh. I'm sorry. Are you serious? Nobody laughed with me. Dad stared at his plate. Mom nodded. We've sacrificed so much for both of you. I almost asked what they'd sacrificed for me. Instead, I said, that's almost my entire emergency fund. Emily waved her hand. You'll earn it back. The sentence hit harder than she realized. Earn it back. As though 10 years of work could simply be repeated because someone else wanted fresh flowers and a ballroom. I put down my fork. I'm happy to buy a gift. Emily's smile faded. I'll help however I reasonably can. Silence. But I'm not paying $90,000 for anyone's wedding. Emily leaned back slowly. I knew you'd do this. I frowned. Do what? Pretend you can afford it. I didn't say that. You basically did. No. I replied calmly. I said I'm choosing not to. Daniel finally spoke. It's just family helping family. I looked at him. If you need $90,000 from your fiance's sister to get married, maybe the wedding is too expensive. His smile disappeared. Mom slammed her hand lightly on the table. You always make everything about money. I stared at her. This conversation is literally about money. Dad sighed. Let's not argue. Emily's eyes filled with tears almost instantly. I can't believe you're ruining this. I blinked. I haven't ruined anything. You have. You knew how important this wedding was. I kept my voice steady. I didn't choose the venue. I didn't choose the budget. And I certainly didn't promise to finance it. Emily stood. I knew you were jealous. That actually made me laugh. Jealous of what? You've always hated that people paid attention to me. There it was. The rewritten family history. Whenever Emily didn't get what she wanted, she invented motives. I wasn't refusing because $90,000 was absurd. I was refusing because I secretly hated her. That was easier for everyone else to believe. The next week became exhausting. Mom called every day. Dad texted constantly. Emily sent photos of dresses, venues, flowers, musicians. As if enough pictures would somehow convince me. One evening Mom arrived at my office unannounced. She carried coffee. That alone made me suspicious. She never visited my office. She sat down across from me. We just want to talk. I nodded. Okay. She smiled gently. You've always been the practical daughter. I waited. You don't need all that money sitting in savings. There it was again. As though money existed only until someone else wanted it. I do need it. For what? Life. She sighed dramatically. You're single. I stared at her. I'm aware. No children. I'm also aware. So what emergency are you saving for? I leaned forward. I don't know. That's why it's called an emergency fund. She rolled her eyes. You're acting selfish. I took a slow breath. I've helped Emily my entire life. Mom frowned. When? I almost laughed. The tuition payments, the rent she'd forgotten, the vacations I'd quietly contributed toward, the credit card I'd paid off after she promised she'd changed. Apparently none of that counted anymore, because when helping becomes expected, people stop seeing it as generosity. They see it as obligation, and obligations can always become bigger. A few days later, Emily invited me for coffee. Against my better judgment, I went. She looked unusually calm. No tears. No anger. She smiled as I sat down. I don't want us fighting. I don't either. She reached into her purse. I've been thinking about what? You don't have to give us the money. I blinked. Really? She nodded. I understand. The conversation felt wrong. Too easy. Too clean. Emily wasn't someone who accepted disappointment gracefully. Not ever. I appreciate that. She smiled warmly. We'll figure something out. I left feeling relieved. Almost guilty for assuming the worst. When I got home, Mom had already texted. Emily told me you'd worked everything out. I'm proud of both of you. I smiled. Maybe this was finally over. Maybe she'd realized she'd asked too much. Maybe we could move forward. Looking back now, that was the moment I should have been terrified. Because Emily had never walked away from something she wanted. Not once in her entire life. And the sudden peace wasn't acceptance. It was preparation. I just didn't know what they had already set in motion. The strange thing about manipulation isn't that it always looks cruel. Sometimes it looks like kindness. The week after Emily told me she'd figure something out, my family became pleasant, painfully pleasant. Mom stopped calling every morning. Dad quit sending guilt-filled text messages. Emily started liking my social media posts again. Even Daniel messaged me. No hard feelings. We appreciate you being honest. I read it twice. Then a third time. For a moment, I actually felt guilty. Maybe I judged them too harshly. Maybe they really had accepted my decision. I should have remembered something I'd learned years earlier while negotiating contracts. When people suddenly stop pushing, it's usually because they've found another way to get what they want. About 10 days later, Emily invited me to tour the wedding venue. I know you're not paying, she said over the phone, but I'd still love your opinion. It sounded genuine. Against my instincts, I agreed. The estate was every bit as beautiful as the photographs. White roses lined the entrance, crystal chandeliers hung from impossibly high ceilings. The lake reflected the afternoon sun like polished glass. Emily walked through every room with the excitement of a little girl. I can already picture it. She pointed toward the ballroom. The dance floor will be there. Then toward the garden. Ceremony here. She sounded happy. Not entitled. Just happy. For the first time in weeks, I felt hopeful. Maybe refusing the money hadn't destroyed our relationship after all. Then Daniel appeared carrying a leather folder. He smiled. Hey, while everyone's together, could you witness something? I frowned. Witness what? Our venue contract. He opened the folder. Emily laughed. The venue needs extra signatures from family members confirming emergency contacts. I glanced at the papers. There were dozens of pages, mostly tiny print. I'd rather not sign anything without reading it. Daniel smiled wider. Of course. Then he casually closed the folder. No problem. It lasted less than 10 seconds. But as we walked away, I noticed something. Daniel looked disappointed. Not embarrassed, disappointed. Like an opportunity had just slipped away. I couldn't explain why that bothered me. So I ignored it. Another week passed. Business was busy. I landed 2 major consulting clients. One contract alone would almost double my annual revenue. I celebrated by taking Friday afternoon off, something I almost never did. I was halfway through reorganizing my home office when my phone rang. A known number. Normally I let those go to voicemail. This time I answered. Hello. Good afternoon. Is this Olivia Carter? Yes. My name is Michelle. I'm calling from First National Community Bank regarding your loan account. My what? Your personal loan. I don't have a personal loan. There was a pause. I'm sorry. I think you've called the wrong customer. She sounded confused. Could you verify your date of birth? I did. She verified my address. Everything matched. Then she said words I'll never forget. Your $90,000 loan payment is now 18 days overdue. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because my brain rejected the sentence. I'm sorry. I think you've mixed me up with someone else. No, Miss Carter. I have your signed agreement in front of me. Signed agreement. The room suddenly felt smaller. When exactly was this loan opened? She answered immediately. 23 days ago. 23 days. Almost exactly 3 weeks after I'd refused to fund the wedding. A cold feeling settled into my stomach. I've never been to your bank. Another pause. According to our records, you completed the application in person. No, you also provided identification. No, and signed before a loan officer. No, she stopped speaking. When she finally spoke again, her tone had changed completely. Miss Carter, if what you're saying is true, I need to transfer you to our fraud department. I don't remember ending the call. I only remember staring at my kitchen wall. My heartbeat sounded louder than the refrigerator. Fraud. Identity theft. Someone had borrowed $90,000 using my name. I kept trying to think logically. Maybe someone had stolen my driver's license. Maybe there'd been a clerical mistake. Maybe. Anything except what my instincts were already whispering. An hour later, I was sitting inside the bank. A woman named Karen introduced herself. I'm very sorry you're dealing with this. She placed a thick folder on the table. We'd like you to review the loan documents. My hands shook slightly as I opened it. The application listed my name, my address, my employer, even my annual income. Every detail was accurate. Then I reached a signature page. I froze. It looked exactly like my signature. Not similar. Exactly. Every curve, every loop, every flourish. If someone had asked me whose signature it was, I would have said mine. Karen watched my face carefully. Is that your signature? No, she nodded slowly. I believe you. I looked up. You do? She pointed toward one corner of the paperwork. Because signatures aren't the only evidence. She explained something I'd never known. Modern loan applications leave digital footprints everywhere. Timestamps, scanner logs, employee identification, security cameras, computer terminals. Every step creates records. That's why we investigate everything. I finally exhaled. So this can be fixed. She hesitated. If it's fraud, eventually. That word terrified me. Because eventually didn't help my credit score, eventually didn't explain the collection notices already being mailed, eventually didn't undo $90,000 attached to my name. Karen slid another document across the table. Unfortunately, the funds have already been released. To whom? She looked uncomfortable. I can't disclose that until the investigation begins. I swallowed hard. So somebody walked out of here with $90,000. Pretending to be me? She nodded. Yes. I drove straight to a lawyer's office. Not because I knew one, because I searched identity theft attorney while sitting in the parking lot. 3 hours later, I found myself across from a woman named Rebecca Lawson. She listened without interrupting. Then she asked one question. Who benefits? I frowned. What? Whenever identity theft happens, the first question isn't who committed it. It's who benefits. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. I didn't want to say the names forming inside my head. Rebecca noticed. You've thought of someone. She waited patiently. My sister wanted $90,000. Rebecca's expression didn't change. And my parents were furious when I refused. She nodded. And my future brother-in-law. I hesitated. He always seemed too interested in my finances. Rebecca folded her hands. I'm not accusing anyone. But if investigators discover a connection, it becomes much easier to establish motive. My stomach dropped. Motive. I suddenly remembered something. The folder at the wedding venue. Daniel asking me to sign. Emily acting strangely calm afterward. Had they really? No. That was impossible. wasn't it? That evening I called Mom. She answered cheerfully. Hi, sweetheart. I need to ask you something. Of course. Has Emily mentioned borrowing money recently? There was a tiny pause. No, why? I received a call from a bank. What kind of call? Someone opened a $90,000 loan in my name. Silence. Not shocked silence, thinking silence. Then Mom spoke. Oh my goodness. Her reaction felt delayed. Too delayed. That's terrible. Did Emily mention anything? No, can you put Dad on? He isn't here. I can hear the television. Another pause. He just stepped outside. I closed my eyes. Mom had never been a convincing liar. I'll call later. Before hanging up, I heard something faint. Emily's voice in the background, laughing. The next morning I filed a police report. The officer was professional. Calm. Methodical. He asked dozens of questions. When he reached a section labeled possible suspects, he looked up. Anyone who had access to your personal information. I didn't answer immediately, because answering meant admitting something I still didn't want to believe. My family. He nodded without reacting. What specifically? They know my social security number. They've seen my driver's license. My mother keeps old tax documents. My father helped me file paperwork years ago. He wrote quietly. What about motive? I looked out the window. My sister wanted exactly $90,000. His pen stopped moving. Exactly? Exactly. That afternoon my phone exploded. Emily called first. I ignored it. Then Dad. Then Mom. Then my Aunt Linda. Then two cousins. Finally I answered Dad. What is going on? He sounded angry. Not worried. Angry. I filed a police report. Against who? I don't know yet. You've embarrassed this family. I blinked. I've embarrassed the family. You involved police. Someone stole my identity. His voice rose. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding doesn't create $90,000 in debt. You should have talked to us first. Those words echoed in my head. To them. Why? Unless he already knew. By evening, the family group chat was chaos. Emily wrote first. Thanks for trying to ruin my wedding. My cousin replied with a sad emoji. My uncle wrote, family problems should stay inside the family. Another aunt added, money changes people. Then Mom sent the message that hurt most. We raised you better than this. Not one person asked if I was okay. Not one person asked who had stolen my identity. Their biggest concern was that I'd involved the police. For the first time, I stopped feeling guilty, because innocent people don't panic when investigators start asking questions. Guilty people do. 2 days later, Rebecca called. The bank has officially opened its fraud investigation. I nodded. Good. They've assigned a senior investigator. Do they think it's serious? Rebecca was quiet. They do now. What changed? The investigator found something unusual. I barely slept the night before meeting the bank investigator. Every possibility ran through my head. Maybe the security cameras had caught the person who impersonated me. Maybe someone had used a fake driver's license. Maybe there had been a simple clerical mistake after all. But deep down, another possibility kept forcing its way into my thoughts. What if it really was someone I loved? The next morning, I arrived at First National Community Bank 15 minutes early. Rebecca was already waiting in the conference room. A few minutes later, the investigator walked in carrying 2 thick binders. My name is Thomas Green, he said as he shook my hand. I've spent 22 years investigating financial fraud. He sat down and opened the first binder. I've reviewed hundreds of forged loan applications. He looked directly at me. This one is different. Thomas slid a copy of the loan agreement across the table. The signature is excellent. I've seen professional forgeries that weren't this convincing. My stomach tightened. So whoever did this practiced? He nodded. Repeatedly. Then he placed another document beside it. It was a blank sheet covered in signatures. My signatures. Dozens of them. Some complete. some half-written, some only my initials. I stared in disbelief. Where did these come from? Thomas pointed toward a note attached to the evidence. They were scanned into the application file. I frowned. I've never seen this page before. Exactly. He leaned back. Someone spent considerable time practicing your signature. Rebecca asked a question I couldn't. Any indication where those practice signatures originated? Thomas turned another page. We traced the scanner used to upload them. He pointed to a serial number. It wasn't scanned at the bank. It came from a home printer scanner. He paused. The scanner's digital fingerprint matched documents we later obtained from another source. What source? Wedding planning files. For a second, I couldn't speak. The scanner belonged to Emily. Thomas nodded slowly. Yes. The room fell silent. Rebecca finally broke it. That alone isn't enough for criminal charges. Thomas agreed. No, but it gave us somewhere to look. He opened the second binder. We subpoenaed email records connected to the loan application. Inside were printed emails, loan confirmations, appointment reminders, identity verification notices. Everyone had been sent to an email address that looked almost identical to mine. Instead of olivia.carter.it was Olivia Carter. Consult, one missing period, a brand new email account created less than a month before the loan, registered from an internet connection belonging to Thomas. Didn't even need to finish. My parents' house, I whispered. He nodded. My hands began to shake. I kept asking myself the same question. Why? Why would they do something this reckless? Thomas seemed to read my thoughts. We still needed motive. He slid over another folder. This came from a court-authorized review of financial records. The folder belonged to Daniel. His checking account had been overdrawn for months. There were notices from collection agencies, credit card balances, late payments. Then one document caught my eye. A statement from an online gambling platform. Hundreds of transactions. Some only $50. Others, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. Rebecca quietly added the totals. Daniel had lost more than $130,000 in less than 2 years. The room suddenly made sense. The lavish wedding, the pressure, the urgency. The exact amount they wanted from me. It had never been about flowers. It had never been about a venue. They were drowning in debt. And I had been their lifeboat. A week later, the police executed a search warrant at my parents' home. I wasn't there. Rebecca insisted I stay away. But she called me afterward. They found exactly what we hoped they wouldn't. What does that mean? A folder. My pulse quickened. What was inside? Practice sheets. The originals. She paused. And copies of your tax returns. My driver's license. Your old passport application. Every document needed to impersonate me, all stored neatly inside a file labeled simply, Olivia. Emily was arrested 2 days later. She requested a lawyer immediately. Daniel insisted he knew nothing. My parents claimed they had only been trying to help. None of their stories matched. Detectives confronted Emily with the scanner evidence. She blamed Daniel. Daniel blamed my mother. My mother blamed Emily. Dad claimed he thought I had eventually agreed to help. Except, phone records showed he had searched one phrase the night before the loan appointment. Penalty for forging loan documents. That single search destroyed his credibility. The final piece arrived unexpectedly. A receptionist from the bank remembered something. She hadn't thought it mattered until investigators showed her family photographs. She recognized my mother. She came with the applicant, the receptionist said. I assumed she was the applicant's mother. She kept answering questions before the applicant could. Security footage confirmed it. Emily had worn sunglasses and a medical mask, claiming she had a severe allergy. My mother spoke most of the time. The loan officer accepted the explanation. The forged identification looked convincing enough. By the time anyone questioned it, $90,000 had already been wired out. The money trail was even worse. Only $22,000 went toward wedding expenses. The rest disappeared almost immediately. credit cards, personal loans, casino markers, online betting accounts. Daniel's debts. The wedding had simply been the excuse. I wasn't supposed to finance a celebration. I was supposed to rescue a gambling addiction I didn't even know existed. 6 months later, the case finally reached court. Emily maintained that everything had been a misunderstanding. Daniel claimed financial stress had clouded his judgment. My parents insisted they believed I would understand eventually. The prosecutor calmly presented the evidence: scanner fingerprints, email metadata, phone location records, security footage, practice signatures, financial transfers, search history. Every lie collapsed under the weight of documented facts. When the judge asked Emily if she had anything to say before sentencing, she looked at me for the first time in months. Tears filled her eyes. "I'm sorry." I searched her face, wondering if she meant it. Maybe she did. Maybe she only regretted getting caught. Either way, the apology came too late. The court dismissed the fraudulent loan in its entirety, restoring my financial record. Emily was convicted of fraud and identity theft. Daniel faced additional charges related to financial deception and illegal gambling transactions. My parents were ordered to pay substantial civil damages for their role in the scheme and were placed under court supervision for financial restitution. The money wasn't what mattered. The truth was, for years, I'd been told that being the responsible one meant sacrificing without question. Standing in that courtroom, I finally understood that responsibility also means protecting yourself, setting boundaries, and refusing to carry the consequences of someone else's choices. Months later, I moved into a new office overlooking the river. My business continued to grow. I rebuilt my savings. I surrounded myself with friends who respected me rather than expected me to rescue them. People sometimes ask whether I miss my family. I miss the family I wished I had. Not the one that forged my name, gambled with my future, and expected me to thank them for it. Justice didn't erase the betrayal, but it gave me something I hadn't realized I'd been missing for years: peace. The end.